So the question today is, can we dry some herbs without a dehydrator, without an oven? Let's try. All right, I've got a lot of dill and I've got some parsley here, but I'm going to focus mainly on the dill because the dill illustrates our problem the best. Can you dry herbs without a dehydrator, especially these wet herbs, these real juicy herbs like this? Look at those stems. There's a lot of water in there. Now, if we just hang these up to dry, we could find ourselves with a mold issue or mildew issue on hand, but I think we can do it. They've been doing it for thousands of years. Let's give it a shot. We can see the dill is starting to go a little bit yellow. It's fairly mature, and so I'm going to cut it and dry some of this while I have it all here. I'd like to use it fresh in my pickles this coming spring, but I'll just have to grow some more. This all right now is ready to be harvested and dried. The challenge with air drying a dill type herb, one of these wet herbs with a very wet stem, you can squeeze it and water comes out, is that you want to dry them in a way that doesn't promote mold growth, and just hanging them up can in fact be a way to promote mold. And so, you know, you gotta get a dry space. Here's the deal: if you put these in a dehydrator, you're going to heat up the plant and you're going to evaporate some of the essential oils that give the dill its flavor. It's the essential oils that we're after. We want to preserve as much of that in here as you can. And when you dehydrate it, it's a little bit harsher than just hanging them up and letting them air dry naturally. Same thing with an oven. So you can essentially cook off some of those volatile oils in there. They will evaporate and go into the air, and that's what you'll smell when you're using a dehydrator. So we're going to hang these up, and hopefully we can hang them in a way that preserves those oils in there. Herbs like rosemary, you can see rosemary is a more woody, it's a more woody plant. Actually, the stems are very tough, and they actually have a little bit of bark. These are 2-year-old rosemary plants, and they've formed bark. But if you rub your hands over them and smell, ooh, that's so good, you can smell that rosemary flavor. That's because it's a very resinous oil. It's a very thick oil. The essential oils in the rosemary are combined with resins in here, and this is a tough plant. You can dry this hanging with no fear of mildew. These respond very well to air drying. While something like this parsley right here, parsley is a wet herb. It has this stalk here you can squeeze and water will come out. So parsley, yet again, is another one of those herbs which could be sketchy air drying, but if you want to preserve that parsley flavor, you'll want to try it. You want to try to air dry them in a humid place. If you put these in a dehydrator, you're going to evaporate all those oils, not all of them, but I think you're going to get an inferior product in the end if you put these in a dehumidifier, or you dry them real low in your oven. I would try, if I was going to preserve some of this by drying, I would try the hanging method. I'm just going to go in and trim off sprigs about that large. Try to keep them pretty uniform. Dill is one of those herbs that's easy to harvest. You just snip the stems off, and I'm snipping them and leaving a long stem so that I could tie them by the stem. I'm not going to wash them, I'm not going to blanch them, I'm not going to do anything with them but tie them together in little bunches and hang them to dry inside my house. So what I'm going to do here is just tie them in bunches. These bunches might be a little bit large, and they will shrink as time goes by. And I have since learned of a method that is an automatic adjustment. It's like a little noose, and as the herbs dry and shrink down in size, the noose actually cinches up around them from the gravity of the herbs. But I didn't do it here because I didn't know about it until later. But I'm just using some cotton butcher's twine. You can get this you can get it online is where I found mine. How long it will take depends on the humidity in your area. If you can crumble the leaves, it's time to take the dill down. The problem is the stems are going to retain more moisture than the delicate little leaves, and so we might have to be plucking some of the leaves off. We might have to pull the smaller stems away from the larger stems and discard the larger stems. we'll see how that goes. And that's once again, that's the problem with trying to air dry these wet herbs, is they well, they don't dry consistently. These fine little hair-like leaves on this dill will be dry in a matter of days or a couple of weeks most, while the stems will retain moisture and we'll have to weed them out. Let me show you what it looks like. Now, just to show you how beautiful this is, I hung it over here by my spice rack. There's not enough good airflow right here. I'm going to have to move it. But for now, to get it out of the way, I'm going to hang it here until I can locate a place in my kitchen area where I've got good airflow and I'm near a vent. I want to be somewhere near the heating vents. And so I'll probably stick it up just up on the wall right over here by my tea station. You want to keep these out of sunlight. Sunlight will oxidize the plant and will give you that problem that you get with dehydration. It'll also help to evaporate some of those essential oils out of your plant. And the more oils that leave your plant, the less flavorful the herb will be. Okay, now it's been 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks, and our dill has successfully dried. So let's take that down. I'll show you what we're going to do next. So we have our dill, and yes, the stems did dry out, and I don't see any mold here. So we can take some of this dill, and it's nice and crispy. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to separate these small little stems and place them in my jar here for storage. So I'm real pleased. It has that real dill flavor here that makes me real happy. I don't want to keep these big stems, so I'm just going to pluck off these small ones. I think the reason this was successful was because we had a lot of low humidity in the house. Because it's winter and we're running our heater, there's not a lot of humidity. Otherwise, there's usually a good bit of humidity around here. We do live in the subtropics, and humidity is a thing. I think that's the key to drying these wet herbs by hanging them, is to make sure they're not in a humid place. I suspect these darker, greener ones would be the best, the absolute best of the best. That looks good. So you can see how the string is loose around these stems. Just slides right off. Well, it would if the stems didn't curl up. But I'm just going to break this off, just like that. And we'll take this one and this one and store them in another jar. Look at that, that's nice, huh? We have gone from this to this in just 2.5 weeks. It is possible, you can do it. You can dry a wet herb with a wet stem indoors by hanging them up. Not only do you get to smell that dill every time you pass by, but it preserves more of the oils in that dill, more flavor, and this dried dill will be better than a store-bought dried dill. Better than a dried dill that you put in your dehydrator. I think this is a better product, and I'm real happy. This is one way you can preserve everything that grows out in your garden. If it's an herb or if it's a plant that can be dried, drying is an age-old preservation method. Hey, thanks for joining me on Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. Please subscribe to our channel, like us on Instagram, and we will talk to you next time. Happy gardening.